This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
So, Mirza Hashem, this morning we're going to be learning two different topics. The first topic, my brother-in-law got married this past Tuesday night. Thank you. So, first of all, we're learning a little bit about chuppah. And then, recently, we received the shaila. They wanted to rent out our shul to make a chasana. So the question came up whether it's permitted to make a chasana, a chuppah, in a Beis Hakenesses. Is that permitted or not? And b'chlal, we could make a little bit of a stretch. Marriage is very relevant to Parsha's Kairach. Why? Kairach was married, right? No, because Rashi says at the beginning of the Parsha, Parshazu Yafen Rashes, right? And what do you wish the Chassan and Kala, the Shir Zol Oila Yafa Zayin? Okay. So with that very legitimate introduction, we begin the Inyan of Chuppah b'Beis Hakenesses. So we start with the Ramah. The Ramah says in Even HaEzer, Siman Samach Aleph, that where is the correct location to make a wedding? Says Ramah, Yesh Shomrim Lasois HaChuppah Tachas HaShemayim. You should make the wedding under the heavens, L'Siman Tov, as a good sign, a good omen, Sheyehei Zaram K'choich VeHaShemayim, that the offspring should be as numerous as the stars. After all, that's the Tachlis Hadvarim, and therefore we want to make a good siman. So the wedding should take place under the heavens, under the stars, as a siman that Zareinu v'chaspenu yarba kachol. Right? People don't always view it that way. Everyone knows that kaspenu they want to be yarba kachol. But Zareinu, not everybody, has the same attitude. So, we put it together. No, Zareinu v'chaspenu yarba kachol. In any event, that's what the Ramah says. That a chuppah should be made under the heavens. And again, important to know, this is the Ramah. The Mechaber does not mention this idea of having a wedding under the heavens. And in fact, Sfardim are not machmir. They're not makbid to have the wedding outside. This is from the Ramah. The Ramah says that the wedding should take place, the chuppah should take place, tachas koich ve'hashamayim. Okay. Now in that case, you can't make a chuppah in a shul. You can't make a chuppah in a house. You can't make it indoors. The chuppah has to take place outdoors. And yet if you look in the Ramah, in a completely different place, the Ramah in a different chelik of Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea, in Hilchos Avelos, he's talking about an avel. Can an avel go into the chuppah when they're not eating and when they're not dancing to listen to the brachos of the Sheva brachos? Okay, can an avel enter the room of the chuppah shaloi b'shas achila to hear the brachos? The Shulchan Aruch says some are matir, some are oiser. So what should you do? Says the Shulchan Aruch, stand outside, right? And you listen to the brachos. Says the Ramah, aval lo yikanis l'bayis klal b'shasha imdim sham b'mazmutei chasan v'kala. At the time that they're playing the instruments for the chasan and kala, don't go in at all. V'chein noyagin ba'ashkenaz, that's the minhag in Germany. Over Medinos Elu, and in these Medinos, what does the Ramah mean in these Medinos? The Ramah did not live in Germany. The Ramah lived in Krakow in Poland. So not only is the minhag not to enter the place of the chuppah when there's music if someone's an avel, in Germany it's the minhag in Poland also. This is all in the house, that they make the wedding, that they eat there, they drink there, they rejoice there. But when the chuppah's in the shul, where when the chuppah's in the shul, what do they do there? They make berachas eres and they make berachas nesuin. Ve'ein sham simcha klal. There's no music there, there's no dancing there, it's very somber, it's very serious. Mutter miyad achar shiva. As soon as the 7 days of Averos are over, you can enter the shul to participate in the chuppah. Who ever heard of making a chuppah in the Beis Hakenesses? The Ramah says very clearly that a chuppah that they made in the Beis Hakenesses, where there's no simcha at all, you can enter there if you're an avel. Some say you can't enter even in the shul till 30. Some are machmer that the avel has to stand outside of the shul. Again, the Ramah mentions the possibility of making a wedding in a shul. And the avel yachal levarech birchas ersin esuin tachas hachuppah shebbeis Hakenesses. Says Rama, he feels that an Avel is able to make Birchas Erusin and Birchas Nesuin under the chuppah in the Beis Hakenesses. That means if he's the Mesader Kedushin, he could enter the Beis Hakenesses. So you want to say one time the Rama mentions the possibility of Beis Hakenesses. Okay, maybe, I don't know, it snuck in, it's a mistake. 2 times. 3 times the Rama mentions that the possibility of making a wedding in a shul. So you have a stira in the Rama. The Rama says in Even HaEzer, a wedding must take place tachas koichlei hashamayim, outdoor wedding, right? In January, you freeze, right? In July, you melt. June, let's say, 3rd, you soak. Doesn't matter what's going on. You make the wedding tachas koichlei hashamayim. And in Yardea, 3 times the Rama is talking about it in the house, in the Beis Hakenesses. What's going on? What's going on? What's the Rama talking about? Do you have to make it tachas koichlei hashamayim? Are you allowed to make it in the shul? In Yerodeh, the Ramah seems to be very okay with making it in the shul. In Even HaEzer, the Ramah says, no, you have to make it tachas kapois hashamayim. Tachas koichlei hashamayim. So the Steichemed, in the Mareches Chosim Bekala, in Ois Aleph, he brings, in the name of the Tferes Yisrael, Rabbi Yisrael Lifshitz, who was a contemporary of Rabbi Kiva Eger, he wrote the commentary Tferes Yisrael on Mishnayos, and in his Hakdama to Seder Moed, he has something called Klalei Smachos. And in Ois Beis, the Tferes Yisrael writes the following. Look on the 3rd line. V'agav da'asal yadan, nema b'milsa. Once we're talking about chasanas, let's mention the following. The Mashakasav of Rama b'yardea siman shin sadi aleph sif gimel. That which Rama wrote in Hilchos Avelos, he named the kafa Rama, the fact that the Rama repeated, v'shileish b'shainai, and he tri-peated, right? He thrice-peated in his language. Chuppah sha'osim b'beis Hakenesses alzeh samchu hachadashim. This is where the Chadashim get their notion from, right? In other words, the Tferes Yisrael is commenting on the recent innovation of the Chadashim to make the wedding in the Beis Hakenesses. Who are the Chadashim? The modern, the reform. That's where they're getting it from. Asher aleim anu boishin, that we are ashamed of them. Asher kol megamasam ledamos esanu letzad shlenucha ledamas. Their whole intention, don't let them convince you that they want to modernize, they want to up to date, they want to be like the Goyim. They want to be like people that we're not allowed to be like. V'amru, dekach yofel lanu lasos hachuppah b'beis Hakenesses. That it's proper, based on this Ramah, it's proper to make the chuppah in the Beis Hakenesses. Says the Tferes Yisrael, Amna milvad sheyesh isur lasos hachuppah b'beis Hakenesses. Aside from the fact that we're prohibited to make a wedding in a shul, mikama ta'amim, for many, many reasons, shalei narach bahem, tan, that we're not going to speak about at length over here, hinei talu atzmam b'korei achbish. They're hanging themselves on spider webs, right? You ever try to hang from the ceiling? Right? Right? So if you're hanging from if you're hanging from a pole, so you may be able to hang on. But if you're hanging from a spider web, you're going to come collapsing down. So these reformed, they're hanging onto spider webs. Why? But the Ramah mentions 3 times the possibility of making a wedding in a shul. The Chumash and Niskar b'divrei Ramah kan Beis Hakenesses. Every time the Ramah mentions the word Beis Hakenesses, b'makar mekayimai tahar, you got to look up the source of the Ramah. You're going to take the Ramah at face value. The Ramah doesn't say anything on his own. You think the Ramah makes up a halacha? The Ramah is citing a source. By the way, does anybody know the majority of the halachas of the Ramah either come from the Maril or come from the Maram Mintz and so forth? So if you look up the source, Rabbi Sai, of the Ramah, Lesa loy ba'agois maimoni shehuva Rabya, it's not in the Agois Maimoni, it's not in the Rabya, because if you look up the source of the matter, the Sham Niskar Bebeis Hanesuin. The person that the Ramah is quoting doesn't say Beis Hakenesses. He says Beis Hanesuin, the wedding hall. There's a difference between a shul and a wedding hall. As long as there's no talking. Sometimes talking is allowed, then there is no difference. But the way a shul is supposed to be, it's not a wedding hall. The Sham Niskar Bebeis Hanesuin became Daki Moshe Kosav Beferish Baruch Chayv Oyir. Says the Tferes Yisrael, what we have in this Ramah is a Ta'as Sefer. The Ramah didn't mean to write Beis Hakenesses. He wrote Beis, Yud, Hey, Nun, which stands for Beis HaNesuin, the wedding hall. V'nir shetas hamadfesu. Shaharei miyamenu, loy ra'inu, v'loy shamanu, noyagin came last as a chuppah tach Beis HaKnesses. Says the verse, so we, us observant Jews, have never heard of making a wedding in a shul. Ela shebishneim hayakasov, Beis, Hey. It stood, right? Look at the Rav Yah. The Rav Yah, the source of Ramah says Beis HaNesuin. The Darkei Moshe says Beis HaNesuin. The Hagoyis Maimoni says Beis HaNesuin. And what the Ramah wrote was Beis Hey Bratzalayma Rosh Tevis Beis HaNesuin. What did the Madfis do? Listen to what he says. The Madfis! Bertzai say Marchiv. Ubertzai say Merch Mekatza, right? If he needs to save space, he makes it wider. He makes, instead of, makes the words bigger. If he wants to make it shorter, he makes the word shorter. The cost of the Beis HaKnesses. It's a Ta'as Sefer. The printers made an error. He wrote Beis, Hey, and the printers understood that to mean Beis HaKnesses. Benikarim Divrei Emes. And what I'm saying is the absolute truth. So says the Torah Israel, is it permitted to make a wedding in a shul? Of course not. We never heard of observant Jews making a wedding in a shul. Who makes a wedding in the shul? Reform, modern. But not traditional Jews. The Chadoshim. So says the Steichamed in the name of the Torah. So not only is it Asur, it's a misreading of the Ramah. Because you have to look up the Ramah at the source. The Ramah is quoting the Rav Yah, quoting the Hagoyis Maimoni, quoting the Darkei Moshe himself as the Ramah, and there the Ramah writes Beis HaNesuin.
In other words, the Ramah never saw this print.
No, the Ramah sent in the folios to the printer, and the printer went off. Or perhaps in the times of the Ramah, the printers were Erlich and they got it right. And subsequent printers misunderstood the Rashi Tevis. So according to Tfaris Yisrael, you allowed to make a wedding in a shul? Absolutely not.
I thought he said it was a wedding hall.
Oh, in a wedding hall you can make it, but not in a shul. Not in a shul. Again, according to the Tfaris Yisrael, what's slightly problematic is that it still doesn't answer the stira in the Ramah. Because even if the Ramah meant Beis HaNesuin, how does that coincide with the Ramah who says you have to make the wedding tachas kochlei hashamayim? Whether it's a shul or a regular building, either way you're indoors. But what happens to what the Ramah said? It has to be under the stars. So we come now to the major source on this topic, the major Maramakim, an amazing piece, and from the Shas Teshuvas Chassam Sofer and Even HaEzer Siman Tzadichas. And the Chassam Sofer is dealing with this contradiction in the Ramah, that the Ramah in Even HaEzer says you have to make it tachas kochlei hashamayim. And the Ramah in Yerodea says the possibility of making it in a Beis HaKnesses, which if you want to read Beis HaNesuin, it ain't going to help you too much. Says the Chassam Sofer Tshuva. The Ramah, Even HaEzer, Seif Siman Samach Aleph Kasav, Yesh Oimrim Lasos Chuppah Tachas HaShamayim L'Siman Tov Sheyiyah Zarum K'Kochlei HaShamayim. Says the Chassam Sofer, where did the Ramah get this from? Where does it come from to make the chuppah under the stars? Shoresh Hadavar B'Tshuvas Mara Mintz. The root of this matter, the source, is the Mara Mintz. Shed Devarav Tzrichen Bir. Just looking at the original source itself needs tremendous clarification. Va'avarim Be'ezos Hashem. Let me explain. Ki Kasav Shem Mara Mintz writes like this: that when the Chassan and Kala come to the place where they're going to have the Sheva Brachos, Tzrichin lahamid hakala liyamin hachasan. The kala stands on the right side. Interesting, no? We take it for granted. But if you would ask us, who should be on the right side? The chasan should be on the right. The kala should be on the left. Right? There's a captain and there's a first mate. Two captains will steer the ship in circles. There's a captain and there's a first mate. The chasan should be on the right. The kala should be on the left, but we don't do that. We do the opposite. We put the chasan on the left and the kala on the right. Why? By Ashkenaz.
She wants it that way. She's the one who's running the place.
She's on the right side, and then
No, I don't believe so. By Minhag Ashkenaz is the kala. Yeah, okay. And that's what we do at Hayom Hazeh. The chasan is on the left. The kala is on the right. Why? It comes from the Maramins. You know what? Why? Because some put the chassan and kala facing the west. Toward the west side, upneim lemizrach, facing the east. So some have, let's say that's the east. That's the east. So the kala is going to be on the right side, and the chassan is going to be on the left side. Why? Why do we want to face the east? Says the Maramins, neged aron hakodesh, opposite the aron. Now you can't start playing around with textual emendations. He says opposite the aron kodesh. There ain't no aron kodesh in the wedding hall. So it is absolutely clear for the Maramins that they used to get married where? In the shul. V'yesh ma'amidin chassan v'kala tzad safon. Some put them in the north. Why? Ki k'shamidin l'tzad darim. If you're going to put them in the south, again, the north would be over there, and you have the right. That's the if that's the east, that's the west.
The chassan should be on the left.
North, south. So the chassan, he says like this: Ki k'shamidin l'tzad darim asa kala kroiva tfeila aron hakodesh meha chassan. We want to put him on the north because since the chassan is the person, the captain, he should be closer to the Aron Kodesh. That's the logic. The logic is to put the chassan on the left, the kala on the right, so that the chassan should be closer to the Aron Kodesh. Okay, because azak kala kroiva trela Aron Kodesh me'ach chassan kitzrichim lamed b'yaminai. V'zeh neged asra. In other words, he's saying like this: some place the chassan and kala to the north. Because if you're going to put them on the south, then the kala is going to be closer to the Aron Kodesh, and that is counterintuitive. So what do we see from the Maramins, Rabbi Sai? Where did they used to get married? In the shul. Mashma mizeh shayurgilan lasses hachuba basic nesses mamish. So you could play around with the letter Beis and the Hey and the printers and the errors and this and that. What are you going to do with Aron Kodesh? If the whole positioning of the chassan and kala is dependent on who is closer to the Aron, that we want the chassan to be closer to the Aron, it's clear they got married in the shul. But you look a few pages later, he says the opposite. Listen to this. Says Maramins. At the time of marriage, we make b'shas hanasuin kama inyanim hamoira al hatzlacha. Many omens, many things that portend to success. Kaganavukos b'shas main, and we'll see what this main is. They used torches at the time of the main. Hamoira la'ira l'simcha. You know why they lit torches at a chasana? Says in Maramins, because light is simcha, and this is a big simcha. Now, if you remember, we learned before Shavuos from the Tashbates that there's another reason why we have torches at a chasana. Keneged matan Torah. Okay. V'chein, says Maramins, tachas hashamayim. You make the chuppah under the heavens, the hakechavim under the stars, koloimar, ka yiyah zarachem kechoichvei hashamayim. And what else do? We throw wheat. We throw wheat at the chassan and kala. Wheat. Not weed, wheat. Wheat. Right? So right? As if to say, we tell them to be fruitful and multiply. So we do three things as a good omen. Torches, stars, wheat.
Not rice?
Mavur, no. Mavur, sha'oisin, ha'chuppah. What do we see from there? Tachas hashemayim. That they made the chuppah under the stars. So the Maramins contradicts himself. First he says, put the chassan on the left side, the kala on the right, so the chassan's near the Aron Kodesh. Then he talks about this Maisa, that we want the wedding to be under the stars. Under the stars. Yeah, it's not a chuppah, no talking, right? Under the stars, as a good sign. So how do we do this? How do we reconcile the Maramins? Says Achsam Sofer, let me explain this to you. The Maramins was a Talmud of the Maril. We know all Minhagei Ashkenaz are based on the Piskei Maril. It says Achsam Sofer, let me explain this. In the times of the Maril, this is what they used to do. They would take the chassan and kala outside, and they would do something called chupas main. Main means simcha. And under kapos hashamayim tachas koichavim, they threw wheat at the chassan and kala. They had torches, and they made a simon. They said, you should pru revu kayi azarach. That was the first chuppah. Then they made a second chuppah. They made 2 chuppahs. They brought everyone in the shul. And in the shul, they would say the Sheva brachos. And they would be mispalel. And they would say, give brachos. Why in the shul? Because they wanted all of the brachos to be in a makam kadosh, at the bima, by the makam of the Sefer Torah. So says the Chassam Sofer, the ancient minhag Ashkenaz, which we know, we've seen that Chassam Sofer writes, where does minhag Ashkenaz come from? It comes from Rashi, Tosfos, and all the great Rishonim that lived in Germany. So what they used to do was they made 2 chasanas, 2 chuppahs. One was chuppahs 9, where they do it under the stars, and they would throw wheat, and they would have torches, and one is where they daven the Sheva brachos.
In other words, they didn't say the Sheva brachos outside, only in the shul.
Only in the shul. Only in the shul. Only in the shul. However,
Did they say Shabbat brachos twice?
no.
So
1 second.
if you only say it
He says,
or if you're Gofen,
listen to what he says. Take a look on the second column. He says, go back to the first column, 2 lines from the bottom. V'yanti b'maril sham, v'kasav sham, minhag hamain shekasavti le'el, v'unah gam ata b'Ashkenaz. We still do the main today. V'zel l'shonu, b'shachris karn l'beis Hakenesses u'lamein. We call everyone to the shul and to the main. V'az hoylech hara the chassan l'fanav. They would lead the chassan, v'chol ha'am achreim, and everybody followed him la'ora avukos by torchlight. V'chas shabbat pesach chatzar beis Hakenesses. When they got to the courtyard, ma'wichin ha'chassan l'kras ha'kala, they would guide the chassan to the kala, v'chiburan yachad, and when they got together, when the chassan and kala were standing together, zarkin kol ha'am chitin, v'ayimrim pu revu v'yoshim sham ha'ad ayin sham. V'haminhag hazeh hu kavayasam v'tzirasim g'amata b'Frankfurt domain today. And after the main, on the 4th line, Moshiv and HaChazam got tachas kapas hakipa hanasas l'sham v'zel chuppah shalanu ki b'mdina seinu ein lanu chuppah b'shas bracha ad kan l'shem aramins. And then the Maro writes, they would take the chasan and they would put him in the Beis Hakenesses, and they would put the chasan next to the Aron Kodesh and the kala next to him, and they would say the Sheva brachos, and they would make 2 chuppahs. However, says the Chassam Sofer, we're not finished. We only would make the 2 chuppahs to a basula.
I can't hear you, Ray.
To a basula. But in Almana, we would only make 1 chuppah. So which one did they do? If you have a choice now, either inside in the shul, outside under the stars, which one takes priority? Which one takes precedence? In other words, push comes to shove. Which type of chuppah is more important? Chuppah the main or the chuppah in the Beis Hakenesses? Says the Chassam Sofer, let me explain something to you. Why would they take the chassan and kala and put them under the stars? How are the stars going to help the fertility of the chassan and kala?
Going back to Avraham Avinu and made the promise to
Very good. So we find that when the Rebbeinu Shalom promised children to Avraham Avinu, look at number 5, Vayotzei oisai hachutza, he took him outside. Vayomer habena hashamayma, he said, look in the heavens, usvar hakoichavim, count the stars. Koyi azarecha, says Rashi, lefi pshutai hoitzioi me'aloi chutz liras b'koichavim. The simple explanation is Hashem took him out of his tent. Says the Chassam Sofer. If Hashem wanted to promise children to Avraham Avinu, you don't think he could have said, Avraham, you're going to have children? Why do you have to take him outside for? What does that accomplish? What does that add? The answer is, the Ramban tells us in many places, that in order to actualize a prophecy, in order to make it come to realization, you need to do a payal dimyon. You do an activity, the action brings the nebulous prophecy into the Olam HaAsiyah. It realizes the prophecy. In other words, we find that when Klal Yisrael were attacking Aram, the Navi was supposed to motion with the spear toward Aram. That would actualize the prophecy that we would destroy Aram. Or, for instance, Masayava Simon Labanim, the Ramban says, that Avram Avinu needed to create our history by actually going to Eretz Yisrael and walking through the land and going through those Nisyonos. The action creates the realization of the prophecy. Says the Ramban, when the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to promise children to Avram Avinu, says of some stuff, it wasn't enough just to say you will have children. He needed to actualize the Nevuah by taking Avraham Avinu out of his tent and saying, you will be as numerous as the stars.
Only for Almana.
No, that's what they did for anyone, right? So now the question is, for the Basula they made both type of chuppahs. But for the Amana, which chuppah did they do? In the Beis Hakenesses or outside under the stars? Says Achsam Sofer, they would only do it outside under the stars. So what do we learn from there? Then when push comes to shove, which type of chuppah is more important? By the shul or under the stars? Under the stars. So says Ramah, says the Chassam Sofer, why the Ramah and Even HaEzer, why is he choosing Dafka, the chuppah under the stars, and not the chuppah in the Beis HaKnesses? The answer is because Ramah lived in Krakow. In Germany, they would make both type of chuppahs. So if you make both, you have chuppah where under the stars, and you have chuppah in the Beis HaKnesses. But in Poland, where they only made one type of chuppah, says Ramah, which chuppah is more important? Tachas kochvei hashamayim, and that is why the Ramah only mentions in Even HaEzer to make the chuppah under the stars. Because the same way for an yeah, but no, they were called Ashkenazim, but where the Ramah lived, it wasn't Ashkenaz, right? It was. He lived in Krakow. So therefore, in other words, like this, we're saying that of course, originally there was a tradition to make two chuppahs. So you make part of it under the Kachavim and part of it in the shul. But the same way, even for an Amana, they only made one. In Krakow, they only made one. Which one? Tachas HaKachavim. Says the Chassam Sofer. Uvenei Yisrael Yoitzim B'yad Ramah. Right? The Ashkenazim, Klal Yisrael follows Ramah. And therefore, a chuppah should be made only outside. Says the Chassam Sofer, let's just see his conclusion over here. He says, on the last paragraph, the third line, V'ulai mishum deba Ashkenaz le'nagu b'shemakim lios nivneh proza l'fnei Beis HaKnesses. Maybe in Ashkenaz they never had a custom for there to be this corridor before the shul. Mispal nata roiv orchim b'chatzer Beis HaKnesses v'avlei makom k'volos palosh. Baha, let's see the conclusion. Baha salkinon kol Yisrael yotzim b'yad Ramah. The conclusion is Klal Yisrael follows Ramah. Lahamed achupa tachas hashamayim l'simna tava. We make the chuppah under the heavens as a good siman. L'skayim by berchas Abraham. But the chadashim, but these, what we call the reform, the modern, loy chafetz b'bracha, they don't want the bracha. V'narchik mimenu. V'narchik mimenu. Miskavein lilma midagim soilam. They want to distance themselves from the bracha of Abraham, and they want to learn from the ways of the Goyim, asher loinis baruch b'kachavim, who are not blessed like the stars. So therefore, these chadashim, mizdavgim, zivugim, bebeis tfilasam, they get married in the shul. You kamaisam, they'll be like the Goyim. They won't be blessed. No problem. Is it asur for them to do it in the shul? No. Are we going to be moicha? No. It's their problem. They don't want the bracha of Avram Avinu, so they won't have the bracha. But the Hanesavim, the brachas avoisam, those who desire to be blessed, like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, tzatzai, mayim, kamaisam, they will have righteous descendants, uchamei hayom yergu degasam, and their children will proliferate like the fish. So that is the conclusion of Chassam Sofer. It used to be they had two chuppahs, right? And that's the answer to the Stira and the Ramah. The Ramah in Even HaEzer says make it under Kachvei Hashamayim. The Ramah in Yordeh is talking about making it in the shul. It's not a contradiction. They used to do both. But if nowadays you can only do one, where should you do it? Under the stars. Why? Only if you want to have a good future. But those who don't want to have a good future, let them get married in the shul like the Goyim.
So you make the same bracha twice?
No, only once, only in the shul. They would sit under the chuppah, which was under the heavens, as a siman tava. They would throw wheat at them.
They're not saying any bracha?
No brachas. No
Or
brachas.
Priya Gofen, the first part of it.
No. It was just siman tava ba'alma.
In the shul?
What?
They never said Hariyat in the shul?
No.
Never?
Oh, when times of Chasam Sofer, they did in the shul. But if you could only do one, then everything should be outside. Everything should be outside.
If it's outside, in the summer I understand you have nice weather, but in the winter, now that it's bad weather, it's cloudy, you can't even see the stars.
Stars are there.
How do you,
They're there. They're still there.
Snow, I don't understand.
The stars are still there.
They throw the wheat at the Chassan and Kala, right? They don't eat the wheat. They throw the wheat. It's a siman ba'alma. Tachas kachavim. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Sai. So according to the Chasam Sofer, should a wedding be in a shul? No. Is it usher to make a wedding in a shul? It's not usher. However, his Talmud, the Maram Shik, takes it a step further. Maram Shik in Even Ezer, Simon Pei Zayin, Maram Shik says like this. Take a look in the second paragraph. Im roitzim l'shanois haminog v'lasois hachuppah b'beis Hakenesses. If you want to change the custom and make the chuppah on the Beis Hakenesses. Now it's important to know, in the paragraph before, he said that even though originally they did make the weddings in the shul, it's already been hundreds of years that they took the wedding outside of the Beis Hakenesses. So if you want to change, says Maram Shik, and make the chuppah in the shul, kedei l'damois l'shar dasois. Why do you think you're doing it? Why do you think people want to get married in the shul? The whole year you're telling them, we need you for the minyan. No, I can't make it, right? The whole year they're not to be found in the shul. And all of a sudden they get married, they want to do it in the shul. Why are they doing that? Because kedei l'damois l'shar dasois. Kasher hu be'emes tam roiv hamishanim. This is a big principle. Anytime you have any movement, even though it may look like they have noble intentions, no. Says Maram Shik, let me tell you what the intentions are. Primarily, the intentions are niyah kagayim. We want to be like goyim. V'haroitzim l'shanois. Someone who wants to move the wedding into the shul is bei mishum iser da'oraisa. You're over an iser da'oraisa shalei l'damois dasenu l'das shar umois, not to be like the goyim. So what the Chasam Sofer merely said is, you don't want the bracha, don't get the bracha. Maram Shik says, you want to reform Judaism, and you want to take the wedding into the shul, like the Christians, lahavdil, it's an Isser Dairaisa of mimicking the Goyim. And this is also the opinion of the Shas HaTshuvas, Maria Assad, Rabbi Yehuda Assad. He also writes that, in the second paragraph, Amnam la'asoisa v'beis Hakenesses pedavka. If someone dafka wants to make it in the shul, choishesh ani le'isr da'iraisa of v'chukasem loy seilechu.
Very strong language, really.
Yeah.
Very strong.
So this is the opinion of the Maram Shik and Ariasa. So the Chasam Sofer says,
You've got to give a disclaimer. The Maram Shik was the Talmud Muvah of the Chasam Sofer.
okay, that was mentioned already. No disclaimer is necessary. But the Maria Assad also agrees with the Maram Shik that it is an Isser Da'iraisa to make a wedding in a shul. So far we have two opinions. Chasam Sofer says, you can't do it in the shul. Why not? Because you need the bracha. It has to be Tachas Kochvei HaShamayim. Maram Shik and Maria Assad further say that this is a mimicking of the Goyim. There's a third problem with doing it in the shul. If anybody has been at a wedding recently, they know, what's taking place at the wedding. The cell phones are ringing, buzzing, schmoozing, tumult, ruckus, right? Says Rav Herzog in Shas HaTshuvas Heichal Yitzchak that to make a wedding in a shul is a chilul of the Beis Hakenesses. Did you know? Very interesting shaila. Is one allowed to talk in a shul? You're allowed to talk. Forget about davening. Stam, are you allowed to talk in a shul?
No.
Lehalacha, you'll be very hard pressed to find anyone who says you're allowed to talk in a shul. You can't talk in a shul. Even but the Knesset Bavel, even if you build it out Tnai, Shulchan Aruch says openly, you can't talk in a shul. So they have to come up with rationalizations. If your kavana is to say good morning because you want to make your friend feel good, because you want to be mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa of yahavta l'recha kamaycha, so then it's a dvar mitzvah. But stam to say, no, has ever, what was the score last night? And it's right, not during davening. We're talking about very hard pressed. Even those poskim who say maybe you could eat in a shul, eating is not considered a kalas roish. Talking is considered under the category, dvar b'telim is under the category of something that there is no really justification for it, unless you have a specific kavana for l'shem mitzvah. But in any event, knowing what goes on at a wedding, you're going to bring that into the Beis Hakenesses. Taruvais, nashim, anashim. That, by definition, right? Rav Moshe holds, what's the reason for mechitza? Because men and women together is kalas roish. So you're going to have men and women intermingling in the shul? It's kalas roish. You can't bring it into the shul. You'll tell me in the times of the Maril and the Maramins, they had the wedding in the shul. You have to look how they describe it. How many women were allowed into the shul? 2. The kala, and the two, the mother and the mother-in-law. But now you're going to bring in the men on one side, the women on another side, with all the cell phones and beepers and Blackberries. Forget it. You can't do it. Says of Herzog, look at number 9. He says on the 3rd line, he named it Poland, Eretz Meladati, Velita in Poland, where I was born, and in Lithuania. And throughout Russia, until World War I, no one ever thought of ever making a wedding anywhere other than outside. Besides doing it under the stars, they would also do it in the courtyard of Shul. When my father brought me to England, he brought me with him. There in England, they made the chuppah in the shul. My father didn't really like it. He wasn't able to change it. Belfast, Ireland. I also, when I was appointed chief rabbi in Ireland, I couldn't change it. But I didn't let them sing at the time of the chuppah, Fus Harimonium, Piano. I didn't let them play, the accordion or the piano. That is mamish min hagoyim. Right? But here in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have this bad custom of getting married in shuls. Anyone who wants to change, he's on the bottom side. It goes without saying that an Ashkenazi whose tradition is to get married under the stars can't move it into the shul. But even the Sfardim, they don't care about the stars. But now you want to innovate, you want to change, you can't change. He says, there's no reason to talk at length at what the Steichemet already writes, that there's the Kamach Le'niach Makam Le'ezgader by, there's no room to be able to change things. V'ani Moisef, says of Herzog, I would like to add, Sharei afilu banim ketanim also lanashik v'beis haknesses. You can't kiss your little children in the shul. And what happens after the chuppah? Right, you have to kiss the chassan and the shver and the masada kedushin and the eidim and your friend, everybody. Over chuppah, you have shalom noyim and meguna. And halavai, that should be the only type of neshikos that are going on at the chuppah. Shaloi rak hachaz makam, right? Elagam akroy medinim anoshim anoshim. Uchidai bizayin v'kotzaf. The iser mamish al kirva da'arayas. Someone who's menashek, a woman who's a nida. So you're going to bring that into, you're going to bring the chuppah into the Beis Hakenesses. V'ani o yisi. Mazur ton b'chutzos b'chsav al pesh lo yisnashku. B'chlala, he said, I'm on a rampage against all these hiskarvos after the chuppah. So to bring this into the Beis Hakenesses, this is completely improper, and this is mamish aser. So far, Rabbi Glatstein, we learned 3 reasons why you should not get married in a shul. Number 1, you're not under the stars. Chasam Sefer. You don't have the bracha. Number 2, Maram Shik, Mari Asad. It's Isser Dairaisa. V'chukoi Seim Lo Yisei. Number 3, Kalas Roish. Kalas Roish. Comes along with Moshe Feinstein, Zechat Tzaddik L'Bracha, in number 10. And he was asked the Shaila, Chaf Dalet Sivan, Tavshin, Tesvav. What year was that?
55.
Yeah, 56, right. From Orav, Rav Shmuel HaKoyin Rut. And Rav Shmuel HaKoyin Rut was, they were mechaberim with Seder Kedushin. Oh. And they were mechaberim with Seder Kedushin. And he said, where's the wedding? And they said, in a shul. He said, no way. They said, then here's the pink slip. He said, I don't know what to do. He asked Moshe, should he, after all of these reasons not to get married in a shul, and there are many poskim who say, not only can you get married in a shul, if you're the Masada Kedushin, you're facilitating these Isurim, you can't be the Masada Kedushin. So should he give up his job? Is it so chamor that the Masada Kedushin should give up his job not to officiate in the shul? Says Rav Moshe, Hine b'masha b'iroi oisin achapa b'esing neses v'lai tachas hashram k'minig sh'kas rama v'chamosh nagavim kameseinu mashai rab leilech l'sham sai kedushin v'mlo yelech, and because if he doesn't go yeshlachu sheyisalku v'yavse parnasasai. Says Rav Moshe, even if you wouldn't lose your job, you should still be the Masada Kedushin. What's wrong with being Masada Kedushin of a wedding that takes place in a shul? Pashud ubarer sha'af b'loich shashe salku, even if they wouldn't be considering removing you, loirak sha'ashar leilech. Not only are you allowed to go, mechuyev leilech, you're obligated to go. Ki olav muto lerois sheyu hakadushin kedin haTorah, because it is your obligation to make sure that the kedushin is kahalacha. V'gam mitzad his chayvusay lehakol. This is one of the obligations of the tzibur, the rabbi. Shezeu meis chayvus harav lakol. V'cheinoisim rabbanim gedolim uvga'onim gam b'New York. Many rabbanim gedolim ga'onim, they do likewise in New York. Shegamkein yesh oisin achuppah bebatim. Many people get married in the house. V'hochem l'sham l'sadar kedushin. V'gam b'shvul krevus u'mareus. Says Rav Moshe, the Ramah says you should get married under the stars as a siman tova. Says Rav Moshe, let me tell you something about simanim. Kilasos hachuppah tachas hashamayim hurak shenoagu l'siman bracha. The only reason why people get married under the kachavim is a good omen. Ain't the takanas chachamim? There's no takana. There's no takana in the Gemara. You have to get married under the stars. It's not a din. It's not we're worried about an isser. You're not going to say that someone who doesn't get married on the stars is an avaryan. Says Rav Moshe, unbelievable. You look in the Gemara in Ksubis, the Gemara says, Besula nises liyoim haravi. You should get married on a Wednesday, and the beer should be on a Thursday. Says Rav Moshe, do you know anyone who gets married on a Thursday night? Who's makbid to get married on a Thursday night? I know people get married on a Thursday night because the halls are cheaper. But do you know anyone who's makbid to get married on a Wednesday, Thursday night, because the Gemara says it's a bracha l'dagim? Come on. Mefurish Reis Ksubas tells us to show bracha l'mikri avaryana. Durak eitzadav alma. That says Tosfos that if someone violates a bracha, he's not an avaryan. It's just good advice. V'koshkein minhagim. Certainly, if there's no bracha over here, the Gemara doesn't say to get married under the stars. It's a minhag. Go minhagim shemrak lebracha she'inza makar mechazal. There's no makar in chazar. Chazal shabade himrak inyan eitz a toiv of loy mikri avaryana. Another thing, the Shulchan Aruch says to get married in the beginning of the month when the moon is b'milua. You ever hear that? The Ramah recommends. I know my wife's side of the family, they hold by this, to get married in the beginning of the month when the moon is getting bigger. Says Moshe, you know people do this? Nobody does this. Who's makbid to get married in the beginning of the month? Right? He says, it's v'gam ha-mechaber near this, in Kufayin Tesh, shaloi lisel v'tchis ha-chodesh, shekama roi v'oilam ein es harmazeh, rak yichidim. L'chein chas v'shalom la'achshivam la'avayonim. Says Moshe, if we don't care about what it says in Shulchan Aruch getting married at the beginning of the month, if we don't care about what it says in the Gemara about getting married on a Wednesday, and having be on the Thursday because of the bracha, then you're going to tell me we have to be concerned about this bracha that's not found in the Gemara, that's only a minhag? The Chassam Sofer said you should get married under the stars. The Chassam Sofer b'sim tzadik has nami lo yomar sham le'isser. Chassam Sofer never said you're not allowed to. Ela kishehu b'kavanosam lumon midarkei hagoyim. Chassam Sofer is only talking about in his times, the modernisha, the reform. Who? They were trying to learn from the goyim. And even then, the Chassam Sofer never said that it's usher for them. He just said that they should. The Chassam Sofer never advised against it. He just said they're just deviating from the bracha. Says Rav Moshe. But still the Chassam Sofer seems to say that getting married in the shul is indicative of someone who doesn't want the bracha of Kaichavim. Says the Chassam Sofer, says Rav Moshe, Chassam Sofer was only writing in his times. V'gam davar zeh mistaber shloi kasav zeh Chassam Sofer elbim kaimer shuskel azar Hashem shebashem reformer nikro laka kamen hagi Yisrael. You know why the Chassam Sofer was trying to, play on the conscience of the Jews who were getting married in the shul and saying, oh, they don't want the bracha, because he was fighting the reform movement. That's why the Chassam Sofer says these people don't want the bracha. Reform. But what if the guy doesn't want to get married outside because the forecast is 15 degrees below zero? Or the guy doesn't want to get married outside because in the middle of July, and, he wears a shtreimel, and he doesn't want to soak the new shtreimel. Or what if the guy doesn't want to get married because it's, Sugista Mabel outside? Said Moshe, then the guy wants the bracha. He wants the bracha. Right? Does a Shulchan Aruch say, get married in the beginning of the month when the moon is getting bigger, and someone who rejects the bracha of the moon, who get married at the end of the month? Do we play on the guy's conscience like that? No. We don't try to make him feel guilty. Because you want the bracha, and if it's not going to work out, don't sweat it, says Moshe. He says like this. He says, the Shulchan Aruch says that even in his time, they no longer get married when Chazal said. And the Pischei Tshuva and the Pnei Yeshua write that Lamaisa we're not choishish for the bracha of Chazal. So if we're not choishish for the bracha of Chazal, kol shekain for the simone bracha that developed after the Goinim. Because in times of Taisus and the Rosh, you never heard of getting married under the stars. And it's a pella on the Chassam Sofer that the Chassam Sofer writes the Balei Tosfos would get married under the stars. Says the Moshe, no, the Balei Tosfos did not get married under the stars. The Balei Tosfos got married lav dafka under the stars. Maybe what the Chassam Sofer means is the Talmidim of the Balei Tosfos. But one last thing the Maram Shik said, if you get married in a shul, you're over Nisa Dairaisa, over Chukasem Lo Seilechu. Maybe in the 1830s, or in the 1850s, or in the 1870s, during the advent of the Reform movement. But nowadays, nobody thinks about where the Goyim get married. They don't even get married anymore. And even if they do, who knows what it is, right? So a guy getting married in a shul, he's not thinking, he could care less what the Goyim do. Bezman Hazeser of Moshe, there's no problem of you're not under the stars. There's no problem you're mimicking the Goyim. But there's a lot of tumult that goes on. Moshe didn't, Wasn't worried about it. He's not worried about the krevos. He's not worried about the mereas. Not even midas chasidus. Says Rav Moshe, if you want to get married in the shul, lechatchila, it is mutter to get married in the shul. Let me tell you one point, one interjection, which is very interesting. That the Ramah, this idea of getting married at the beginning of the month, where does it come from? The Ramah says, look at number 11. At the end of the Shulchan Aruch, this is in Eben Ezer, Siman Samach Dalet, the Ramah says, "V'noagu shaloi lisa nashim ela b'tchilas hachodesh." The minhag is not to get married only in the beginning of the month, ba'oid shehalavana b'milua, when the moon is getting bigger. Okay? You do it, you don't do it, you don't do it. I'm going to tell you something very interesting. There's a steer on the Ramah. Okay? The Ramah just said, get married in the beginning of the month. The Ramah, in Orach Chaim, Siman Tav Kuf Nun Aleph, by Hilchos 3 weeks, which is coming up, Shulchan Aruch says, don't get married from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av. Says Ramah, V'noyagin, the minhag is, Lahachmir, She'ein noisim miyud zayin b'tamuz ve'elach. You don't get married already from Shavas v'tamuz. So Shulchan Aruch says, don't get married from Rosh Chodesh. Says Ramah, V'noyagin, the minhag is not to get married from Shavas v'tamuz. Ask the Hafla in the Sefer HaMakneh, why is it necessary for the Ramah to add, not to get married from Shavas v'tamuz? Who's getting married at Shavas v'tamuz until Rosh Chodesh? It's the end of the month. The Ramah already said, you only get married in the beginning of the month. Why would it be necessary for him to say, Shulchan Aruch only holds of 9 days, we hold of Shavas v'tamuz? You don't, even if we don't hold of Shavas v'tamuz, no one's getting married then anyway. Listen to this. Says the Hafla, you have to be very medakdek in the lashon of the Ramah. The Ramah never said v'noyhagin, not to get married only in the beginning of the month. He says v'nohagu. There is a tremendous difference between the word v'nohagu and v'noyhagin. You know what the difference is? Noyhagin means you should have this custom l'chadchila. Nohagu means people do it even though there's no reason for it. That's what the Ramah. Now, who says this klal? The Ramah himself. In the Chuvas Ramah, the Ramah says you should know. When I write v'noyagin, it means you should do it. When I write v'noagu, it means people do it. So when the Ramah says that v'noagu, not to get married only in the beginning of the month, the Ramah is not saying it's a good minhag. He's just pointing out people do it. But l'chatchila, you shouldn't get married from Shavas v'tamuz. So I believe Rav Pam would say, people would say, but it's the beginning of the month, the Ramah. The Ramah never said that this is a good minhag. He's just saying people do it. Nowadays people don't do it. So there's no reason to do it. I'm not being mevatel the minhag, I'm just giving you something to think about. That when the Ramah never says anywhere you should have the minhag of not getting married in the beginning of the month. The Ramah uses the word v'nohagu. And the Chuvas Ramah, you can look it up. And the Magen Avram quotes in Sim Tav Tzadik, there's a difference between noyagin and nohagu. Let's just conclude with the following.
What's this willow with the new moon? What is
The moon, Klal Yisrael, is represented by the new moon, right? Shehem asidim l'heschadesh k'maisa. The moon, as it's getting bigger, is the waxing and waning of the moon is symbolic of Klal Yisrael. So at the beginning of the month, as the moon is getting bigger, it's a good mazel.
It's going to get bigger also?
Pru Ravu, good mazel. Rabbi, so what about what we do? We get married, not in the shul. So, I've been to weddings in shuls. Most weddings are not outside, though. You get married in an industrial hall with a little, hole in the roof. You look up, and you could see a star, maybe. Are you yotzei the inyan of the stars getting married indoors under the glass roof? Or they open it. So the Divrei Malkiel writes in Chelak Hey, Siman Reish Hey, number 14. Of course, that's good enough. Right? He says, "Akapanim yoyel shebashas binyan beis Hakenesses yinu befer shabaynu anaskin shasu sham chapos." He says, "V'yesh v'kam yishoisim begag hacheder Pesach." Some make an opening in the roof. Kein shoisim besukos habnus b'suchos hagag kodim hachuppah. He said you could do that. Don't do it in a shul, but but you could do it in, you could make a hole in the roof, and you're yotze the inyan of getting married under the stars. However, Levushe Mordechai, Rav Mordechai Leib Winkler, he says no. That accomplishes absolutely nothing. Getting married in a wedding hall with an open roof, you're not yotze getting married in the shul. You're not yotze getting married under the stars, right? What do you mean? Why are we not like Avram Avinu? So he says like this. He says, when Rebbe Hashem wanted to give a bracha to Avram, you don't think Rebbe Hashem could have made a hole in Avram's roof? Why did Hashem have to take Avram outside? Apparently, if you want to get the bracha, you got to go outside. But I believe, the minhag Yisrael is like the Divrei Malkiel, that we get married in the halls, and you open up the roof, and this way, we may not get married on Wednesdays, and we may not throw the wheat, but at least we still have a little opening on the roof. Baruch Hashem shebless us all, Zareinu v'chaspenu, Yarbe kachol v'kachovim v'aloyla.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.